Alright, this is my second tutorial here. I'm Ostergrim, and this is what I'm calling horrible tutorials. This is my second tutorial, and this is about the concepts of light and how to create a well-lit scene within Blender. I'm just going to go over some of the concepts of light and how we can create a well-lit scene using some basic tools that is currently used within videography and photography. If you were reading my blog and you've seen a few weeks ago I posted a video about, or it was a link to a YouTube video about how professional video recording works. You got to see kind of behind the scenes, which I thought was really neat. You get to see where the light comes from, how they light the scene, and that's something you just need to kind of take into consideration within using cycles. Blender can recreate realistic light pretty well. So first off, there are some differences between cycles and real-life lighting. In my blog post, I've got some information about real-life lighting. I'm just going to go into what the difference between cycles and real life is. Cycles works by taking a pixel and randomly taking a point of light from the pixel on the screen and points it at or shoots it at your scene, and then that point bounces around like light would in reverse until it hits an emitter, or until it hits one of the maximum points of your scene settings. And then once it hits the emitter, it then collects the information and then sends it back to your camera, your virtual camera, and you now have a point of light on your screen. Where real light works in the opposite way, which is the forward way, light comes from an emitting source, like a light bulb, bounces around the room, hits all different points, and then it finally ends up in your eye as a photon. And that's how we understand photons work. Where light carries a lot of information with it, intensity, direction, color, wavelength, polarization, and speed of light. That's all carried within a single photon, where in cycles we lose a lot of that. We lose wavelength, polarization, and the speed of light because we don't really need it. There are some things that we do need it for that we can fake, like dispersion and refraction. Those are two things that we lose within cycles, but we can fake it. And by dispersion and refraction, I mean if you take a light bulb and you point it at a prism, you would have a rainbow on the other side of the prism, and that's because of dispersion and refraction in the prism, and we lose some of that. But don't get me wrong, cycles works really well, and we can fake some of that dispersion effect, but it does add a lot of rendering time. So I'm not really going to go into it, but that's something we need to take into consideration if we're trying to recreate a scene. I've played with some refraction stuff about a month ago, and it didn't turn out the way I expected, and I lost a lot of information from what I was trying to recreate, and it just kind of looked really weird. But I'm okay with it. I'm really happy with the way cycles works. So first off, we're going to talk about some things about lighting, and I'll just kind of go over it all right now. We've got 3-point lighting, we've got soft and hard lights, diffusion and gloss bouncing, shadows and silhouettes. I'm going to go into colors, colors and temperature, and how we can emphasize emotion, and then I'll finally sum it up with some questions about what you need to think about your scene. So first off, 3-point lighting. 3-point lighting is a fairly simple concept of lights that is common within photography and videography. It's really simple. So I'll go into this scene here. We can see I have my 3 points of light. It's this cube, and this cube. And that one's actually turned off. We'll turn it on a little bit so we can give some effect here. With cubes, I've set up cubes because I've seen a couple of tutorials that were playing with cycles, and they were just like, well, if you want light, just create an emitter plane. I don't like emitter planes, using a plane as an emitter, because that is light coming from like a sheet of paper, and that doesn't make sense to me. Using an emitter plane, you've got light on both sides, coming off of both sides, and that just seemed so fake. And I didn't want light going all over the place in my stage scene here. So I created these cubes. These cubes are very basic. They have 2 material settings on them. One is an emitter and one is just a holdout. The holdout is basically it doesn't do anything with light. If light touches it, it doesn't do anything. It just stops. So it's basically a black hole of light, which worked good for my scene because I didn't want it to bounce off light either. But if you wanted more realistic, you could give it a diffuse or a gloss. If you wanted it to give, for example, if you had a lamp in real light and it was a silver or a metal lamp, then you would have light bouncing off of it. If you wanted to recreate that, you could do that with with a gloss material or gloss texture on there. Yeah, material. So these cubes, like I said, are fairly simple. The 5 faces on here are the holdout, and 1 face is the emitter. What that does, as you can see, is that stops light from just going everywhere that you would get from a plane, or if you just had a box or something that was completely an emitter. Now back onto 3-point lighting. We have 3 points of light. That's why it is called 3-point lighting. The first one is this one back here. This is what's called the fill light. The fill light fills light from in your background and just kind of the rest of your scene. You can play with that light and make it do what you want. This gives some temperature and color to your room and gives gives the emotions in your room. That's something you want to play with to give it some color. This one right here is the backlight. The backlight lights up your object from the back, and that gives some highlight around the edge, and it gives a little bit of details around the edges, and it fills up a little bit of light on your main object. And the last light here is the key light. The key light is one of the most important ones, and you have to position it well. A lower light is better because that gives it light coming up from the bottom. The key light, I'm sorry, the backlight I like to have coming from the top because that does highlight the edges of the top of your model here. This is all fairly simple. It's all simple to do, and you can really light up a good scene here and make your model predominant in your scene. And that's one of the main things about 3-point lighting, is that you want to give your model the main light from your scene. You can still give your scenes, your background, some light and some temperature and color, but you want to keep your model the main focus. 3-point lighting is good for representing models. So if you have something that you've created, you want to share it with people, and you want to you don't know how to light it properly. You don't want just a checkerboard background or nothing in the background. You can do a quick scene like this. I have just some basic planes here for the walls and the floor of my studio or my stage. So that's real simple that you can do. And 3-point lighting is great for models. In videography and photography, it is mostly used for portraits. And that's because it gives some highlighting effects. And if you had hair on these guys, you would see those hairs highlighted, and it just looks really nice. So that's the main thing about 3-point lighting. My next topic is soft and hard lighting. Soft and hard lighting is a really tough concept to understand. I mean, well, it's simple, but it's hard to really get used to doing. So soft lighting, for example, on the background here, is something that we would want. So in order to give a softer light, we would need to scale out our light or emitters out some to kind of just give a soft light to it. The difference between soft and hard light is soft light is basically, as you think, is it gives a very soft shadow to things, and doesn't really define the shadow in light itself, where hard light does. It's a very sharp shadow, it's very contrasting, and depending on what you want from your scene, you need to play with that. So in a background, you want to give soft light because you don't want, harsh corners and all that. But from your backlights, backlights onto your model, you do want a sharper object. So I'm actually going to scale this down here and make it really small. So that's the difference. Is you can for soft lights you want a big lamp. For hard lights you want a small sharp lamp. And we'll go in here and we'll adjust this up to, let's see, 150. There we go, 150. Now we can start seeing the sharp shadow here, where before it was a really soft shadow. Let's go to 200. Yeah, start to fill it out. So there we can see it a little bit better. Yeah, that's still a little too small, I think, for my scene. Okay, there we go. Gives a lot of brightness, and yeah, it's still too big. Scale it back down. Like I said, it's really difficult to kind of play with and figure out what you really want. But, and that's not going to be my final, but that's just an example of how it gives a sharper light. And we can see it also on our model. It's hard to kind of tell here. So we'll scale this guy down too. Give him some brightness. 3000. So, and it's really difficult. You have to kind of play with it. Let's get it rendered out a little bit better here. When you do harder lights, you are going to need to render it out a little bit more to get rid of darkness and shadows. But yeah, that looks better. Just because it's harder for light to find that end pane, that end emitter that's coming from your camera, your virtual camera. So soft lights are large, dim, and farther away. Hard lights are small, bright, and closer. So again, another thing we can do is we can bring this guy over. Let's go in here. Bring him down. So make sure that's, yeah, that's in our scene there, but or in our camera final picture here, but it's still okay. I'm happy with that. Yeah, there you go. You can see the sharpness of the hard light there, and that's really what you want, depending on the style you want to give your scene. That's what you're gonna do, is give it some hard lights or soft lights, and that's really it. Like I said, this is all pretty simple stuff. You just need to understand how to use lights in your scene. So again, this scene is fairly simple. It's 4 planes, and the planes I've got here set up with the basic diffuse gray. You can set it up to whatever you want. You can change these lights around. I'm going to go ahead and upload this this blend file so that you can play with it if you like, and I'll have a link to it. But I'm going to go ahead and close out of that one. For my next thing, I'm going to talk about diffusion, bouncing, and gloss. I came in here, actually I found this model on, what is this website called? Blend Swap. I love Blend Swap because you can find a lot of great stuff here. And I played with this model to give myself something to do with lighting, and this turned out really great. I wanted to do this. I was thinking of a Star Trek scene or some other type of hallway to really kind of emphasize this, and this was perfect that I found this. I'm glad this guy, see if I can remember this guy's name, MCAVADY McCavity, on Blend Swap. So you can go ahead and download that blend file from them, and you know, I'm really happy about this. So this gives me a lot of things here. In this final picture, I've got some green lighting and some gloss here on the floor, but I also want to diffuse light coming off of this these panels here, and I wanted to give the floor some emphasis, and I wanted to give some light from the top here some emphasis. I found out that I had to do this. Let's see here. Where's my floor cube? Let's get out of this. Yeah. On this, I did a mix shader of glossy and diffuse. Now, that gives you a lot of stuff to do. Diffuse, I mean, light from on a glossy texture. If you didn't have the diffuse in here, it would end up not seeing these the scatter of light, basically. And you only saw, it was basically like a mirror, and it was really annoying to me. So I did this mix shader to give the diffuse, and it's very little gloss. I wanted to give this floor some nice looking to it. So that's how you work with gloss, and you can get some scatter of light on diffuse, and that also bounces back, and that's something you just kind of need to play with within regards to your scene. It's just something to play with, something to keep in mind, is that this light does also bounce back and hits other things. It's not noticeable unless you think about it, and unless you're looking for it, but it gives a lot to your scene within regards to lighting your scene. This is all really simple stuff to do and play with here. Shadows and silhouettes. I didn't really do much. I didn't think about doing something within regards to shadows and silhouettes, but actually I can go back here. We can turn off that light. Perfect. Shadows and silhouettes. If you're going to light something from the background, you can give a nice shadow, and you still want to light your scene. You want to give your scene some light in here. So this is why we have in 3-point lighting, we can bring this guy up to 2. Let's bring it up to 5. It's still a well-lit scene, but you've got some dark and shade and shadows in your main objects here. So let me also give a little bit more silhouette effect. Rotate it like this. And we'll bring it down. Rotate it up. Yes, silhouettes. Silhouettes require some hard light too, so it's not a bad idea to make sure that your light is small. If you think about it, a normal silhouette that you think about would be a cowboy riding off into the sunset, right? And that's the sun is actually a relatively small, and sun lamps give a great silhouette effect. And that's because sun lamps are hard lights. They're large, bright, but far, which is interesting if you think about it. You know, soft lights are large, dim, and far, where the sun is huge, it's bright, and it's really far away, which means if it's large and it's really far, well, the size of it relatively becomes, you know, if you look up in the sky and you were able to look at the sun, you'd hold your hand out with a dime in your hand, and you'd probably, I think it's about the size of a dime in your hand at arm's length. And think about that. So if you've got a light bulb the size of a dime in your hand, you've got basically a small, bright, and close emitter, and that's hard lights. If the sun took up half of our sky, it would be hopefully a lot dimmer, because we wouldn't need that bright and large of a sun, but it would be a very soft light because it would be lighting everything around you. So here's how you can do some shadows and silhouettes in Blender. You just need to make sure you have your lights behind your model, and it gives a really interesting effect. For glass, it looks really good. And kind of want to turn this guy up a little bit more. Got 8. You got some light there. You just have a small emitter, and it's really strong. I mean, it's really simple. And I don't. It's hard to really get a well-lit scene with that, just because silhouettes are dark. The scene's going to be dark. So the best thing you can do is make sure your background is well lit. So I think that's probably too bright. Oh, that looks good. Yeah, so there you go. You just need to make sure your background is well lit. It's got good light to it. And that gives a lot of your effect here. That's silhouettes. The other part of silhouettes is the Falloff, and that's something I didn't think about until I just saw that in my notes. Silhouettes and Falloff is the difference between hard and soft lights. A harder light, of course, is going to give a sharper Falloff, and a softer light, bigger light, is going to give a more deep Falloff, which it's very smooth. And just remove the front light, and there you go. Looks pretty good, I think. Yeah, just giving for a silhouette, you just want to make sure your background is really good and well lit, and make sure you've got an emitter right behind it so you can kind of give that a nice effect. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done with basic concepts. Now we're going to go into the color. Now, I'm showing this scene. I've already made my renders from the scene to kind of give emphasis onto what I wanted to show. But I'm going to go in here and show you some of the things I did adjust. So if you kind of look in here, you can see the different emitters on our scene. These are little cubes here, which I really thought was really interesting. You got cubes that are emitters, and you got these cubes up here that are emitters. These lights are all linked with the same materials. These side lamps are all linked with the same materials, as you can see in here. They're all linked, so that really made it really simple. These are called blue lights because in the original model he made them blue, which which was good, but it didn't fit what I was trying to show. You just go in here and you can adjust the lights. Red lights are notoriously darker, so you have to make them emit brighter to give an effect that you want. That's just the way it is. That's too bright for what I was doing, but you do have to make them emit more than if you were going to have yellow lights. Yellow lights appear brighter than red. Blue lights also appear brighter. They actually look pretty dark in there. But yeah, so there it is. That's how you can play with those. And come up in here and let's find this light. And you'll want to contrast colors. There's a couple of ways you can do that using a color wheel. But let's go into my files I already made. Here? No. Turn off my hidden files. Oh, it's on my desktop, isn't it? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Yeah. So we'll go in here. 3-point lighting. So some final renders of 3-point lighting. Is this what I wanted? Warm. Yes, temperature. I'll start with temperature colors here. So this is warm lighting. Warm lighting is more of an orange in the background, and you've got some white or bluish lights coming from the front. Warm lighting tends to give the effect of dimmer lights. Blue tends to give a more brighter light, and that's just the way that the scene works. If you wanted to kind of emphasize a darkly lit room, you'd want to use an orange light. Turn down the strength of it, and make sure you've got white or blue lights on your main characters. So that's really simple. This dark room, this was what I started out with in this tutorial, was the dark room originally, and I was using this to kind of just show you can have a dark room, a dark scene, while still having your characters, well lit, and that's using 3-point lighting for that. And then just a natural color, a well-lit room, using white or blue lights in the background. That gives emphasis on the temperature of the room, which actually isn't the temperature of the room, it's the temperature of the light. Blues are a cooler light, brighter light. Oranges and reds are darker and warmer lights. That can also change how the room feels. You think of if you had a fire scene or a fireplace scene in a Christmas room. Of course, you want the Christmas tree lit with bright colors, but you don't want them coloring up the room too much. But you want a fireplace, and that fireplace is going to be warm, so you want that warmth to really be affecting the color of the room. So you want to give it oranges and reds, and the natural emitters in your room, like lamps and stuff, are going to be an orange because that gives that warm feeling. But then you step outside and you go into a cold exterior where there's snow. You think about snow and maybe a nighttime, and you'll have light coming off of the moon, which is giving a blue effect, and it's a cooler. Just blues give that feeling of cold. So that's what temperature is. It's not just the temperature of the light bulb itself, but how the warmth of the room or how it kind of feels. There is actual temperature to it, based upon I can't remember what it is, but it's if you look on Wikipedia, you can figure out the temperature of light and why light is, warm light is orange and, cooler lights are blue, and, why there's a temperature scale there. It's actually a physical thing that gives that Kelvin and the temperature of the light. Which I looked at it and I found it really interesting, but it's really hard for me to convey in a tutorial here. So that's the temperature of lights. Now on to colors and emotions. Of course, colors can emphasize emotions. Think about in Star Trek, you go. The captain would say, yellow alert, everybody's on yellow alert, and the rooms turn yellow, lights turn yellow, and everything dims down, and you've got everybody ready. Red alert is like a warning, and you've got low lights, but everything's red, and that's no longer a warning. It's now a dire situation. So let's see, I've got this room, which was a yellow, and this was again the hallway that I was working with, and I set it for yellow and dimmed the lights down, and it's still a pretty good lit scene. I could have probably kept the white in these up, turned them up a little bit more, but it just didn't come out like I wanted it to. So it all depends on what you're trying to give. Here's a same exact scene, just red lights, and that's it was the difference between red and yellow. Of what's the situation? It's now everybody's in warning. Everybody's ready, so that situation. Here was normal lighting from the original scene. The lights were somewhat blue here. And these were white lights, which you could probably give these a blue or a green. I started looking at fluorescent lights, and they're a bluish green. They're more green than they are blue. And if you had filters like this or lenses over fluorescent lights, you look at them and they're kind of greenish too. So just something to kind of look at is to understand, what are you looking at? What are you trying to recreate here? Is this supposed to be like fluorescent lights, the tube lights, and are they supposed to be greenish blue, or are they supposed to be something else? So that's the normal. Some mood lights, and this was the same with the carpet kind of interior as this one. We've got the red lights, kind of giving that warning feeling. I did these with the gloss here, you can see, because I wanted to give this as more of a medical bay feel to it. This felt kind of like a hotel or that kind of a space station hotel, a futuristic hotel or something. And then I've got the normal bright lights here. And actually, this is white and blue. And I turned up the lights to kind of give you some. See, this is a well-lit scene. These are actually kind of dark, but they're intended to be dark. Then I've got this one, right? That was meant to be more of the medical scene. This was a medical, white situation where white emphasizes purity. White gives you that clean feeling. It's sterile. Where grays kind of gives you grays and greens, as you can see here in the floor, this carpet look. You kind of have that feeling of it's homely. It's more earthy. It's where people come to rest. It's where you've just got that feeling of, it feels more like a hotel than a medic station. Also on here, I wanted to kind of emphasize that it wasn't, completely medic situation here. It was This was more of a red as a sinister kind of color. That's why I didn't use the gloss on this one. And it was to kind of give it that feeling of it's not really a nice place you want to be. So you just kind of have to play with that. And gloss can give you that a nice effect. You know, do you want it to appear clean, or do you want it to appear, you know, dirty, or more natural? So that's color of lights and how you can use lights to influence your scene. Again, if you were going to have an object or somebody, you know, in your scene here, you're going to want to light them and still consider the 3-point lighting concept. Use this as your backlights. Use this as your backlights. Use this as your fill lights. Use some of this as your fill lights also. But you still need something lighting your main object, your main character. So you just have to take that into consideration. So that's pretty much all I can discuss. You can play with this scene too. I'll have links to this on my blog and discuss a little bit more. So the first thing you need to consider when lighting your scene is what is your subject? What are you trying to light? If you're going to be lighting a model that you created, you're going to want a very simple scene and use 3-point lighting. Create something that you can now show off. You want something that's cooler lights, blues, whites. You don't really want to give it too much color in your scene here to pull it away from your main object. If you're doing a model, if you're trying to show off a model or something. So that's something you need to consider, is what is your subject? Are you going to do a scene here, like this? Are you going to do something where you need to consider lights in the background? Do you need to consider lights? You always need to consider, where are your lights? What are they doing? What is lighting your main object? What is lighting the background? You need to understand that and take that into consideration. The other thing is, what is the emotion that you're trying to convey? When you take a picture, you're not always taking a picture of something that you don't have emotion with. If you see a sunset, if you're with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and you're on the beach and you see a sunset and you want to take a picture of that, there's emotion attached to that. Those reds and oranges and the sea in the background, that's all something that you want to pull together and you want to convey that. So, colors and just take into consideration, what is the emotion of the scene. If you want to make it, a white scene, then that's what you want to do. If you want to make it a white medical scene or something like that, you need to take in consideration, what is the surroundings. Like I said before, how are these lights affecting your scene? If you need to give some effect here, you need to maybe separate these lights from their materials, and dim these background lights down. So you need to darken this back hallway, or whatever you need to do. You need to consider that. It's just what you need to consider. And if you're going to dim those lights down, you may want to change the temperature. What is the temperature you want to make this place feel? Do you want to make it feel warm? Do you want to make it feel cold? Blue lights are colder. Warm lights mean darker and warmer, warmer colors. And that's pretty much it. That's all that I can really discuss about lighting. It's, this could be, people do these types of tutorials, and classes on this stuff. This is the best I can do within, I don't know how long this has been, maybe 30 minutes. So I hope I've given you a lot to think about, and you can take some stuff into consideration here about how to light your scene. These are just 2 basic scenes of what to do, and you can do so much with your scene and with lights. you need to always consider having a key light and some sort of backlight. Use some concepts from 3-point lighting. You can also use concepts, like I said, take a look at what professional people do. If you can see behind the scenes on videos, do that so you can understand where are the lights, where are they set up, so you can know what are you going to do with your scenes in Blender or any modeling that you're going to do. You can take this to anything. This doesn't have to be stuck here in Blender. You can do this to real light if you're going to do photography, if you're going to do videography, if you're going to do rendering in any different type of software. So it's just stuff you need to take into consideration and understand how lights work. And that's pretty much it. I hope I've given you enough information, and you can take this and make a well-lit scene. Again, if you've created a scene that you've made that appears well lit using this tutorial and some instructions, and if you think you want to share it, feel free to share it on my blog. Send a link, and I'll be glad to take a look at it. Also, post any responses in the YouTube. If you think I've missed something that needs to be gone over, feel free to bring it up and let me know. Maybe it's something I can redo as another lighting tutorial, and take some different looks into it and different objectives, and so we can all learn. So again, I'm Ostergrim, and I hope you really enjoyed this tutorial. So thanks.